Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. We have NFL news. The NCAA's top six all fall. A great day in California for NASCAR. A little bit of baseball talk, including some fantasy baseball rankings for you. All that and more. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
Welcome into the Sports Stove podcast. I'm your host, Good Looking, and here's what's cooking. I'm Vince, and I'm joined by my dad, Dale Stover, today. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Good to have you here on a Monday episode of the Sports Stove. We got a lot of things going on. Today's episode is presented by Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Live. We're going to give you a segment of yesterday's show here in just a few minutes, breaking down the rankings of first baseman and third baseman. But you can catch Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Live every Sunday, 8 p.m. on Belly Up Fantasy's Facebook and Twitter pages, as well as on Tiki Live on your streaming television or the Belly Up Sports TV network on your Roku channel as well. So plenty of places to find it. Kevin Wilson, myself, we've had Belly Up Baseball Director Dan D'Amico on the last 2 weeks as well. Good conversation this last episode especially. So make sure you tune into that. You can also find the podcast Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Live on Spreaker and Spotify if you'd like to listen to that as well. All right, Dad, let's get right into it. The NFL had some breaking news that yesterday, I guess, Sunday. Ali Marpet retires at the age 28 following his first All-Pro season. Many consider him to be the best offensive lineman in Tampa, and 28-year-old walking away from football for, wanting to protect his health. What are your thoughts on Ali Marpet's early retirement?
Well, it's a little surprising, but again, we're seeing more of this. Guys are concerned about their health from there when they look at guys that, back in the day, especially that played for a long time and some of the health problems. I think also, guys, they're making a lot more money now. And so I think if they're in the league, and I think he's been in the league, 7 years, 9 years, I read something like that. Financially, I don't think it's a deal. I mean, some people always want more, but I think financially they're in a position where they can, especially if they've got something else lined up that they're going to do. And, when you win a Super Bowl, that's what you're after. And I think, again, I don't think Tampa's going to be what Tampa has been the last 2 years now for a few more years. And you're an offensive lineman. Hey, it probably makes some sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's some good points. We saw Andrew Luck do this. Patrick Willis stepped away a little earlier than most people would as well. You're right. He's not blocking for Tom Brady anymore. He doesn't know who he's going to be blocking for at this point. But he makes the decision, and you can't fault the guy for making a personal decision to walk away, take care of himself. And, you're right. He's got a good chunk of change, although he probably could have gotten one more contract and gotten a whole bunch more considering how he's been playing. But his career's not going to go up really at this point. He's been an All-Pro. He's been a Super Bowl champ. And, I guess get away, live your life. Maybe he's got some business adventures there planned out already as well, and to continue to make some money and live the good life, I guess. At 28, man, if I could have retired at 28, that'd been pretty awesome. But nonetheless, an interesting bit of news for sure. Something else that's been talked about a lot this past week was the possibility of Troy Aikman, who's a free agent in the media world. Looks like he's going to get a massive deal at ESPN to go and do Monday Night Football. Joe Buck could join him, but at this point, we're talking about just Troy Aikman. And Dad, we've watched the growth of the media, the importance of who's calling the games, how that draws the crowd, the guys people like. Aikman, there's a mixed bag on him as far as people who like him and people who don't like him. Do you think this would be a good get for ESPN and Monday Night Football?
I think so. I mean, it'd be a big name for sure, depending exactly who they pair up with him. there. Again, he worked real well with Joe Buck, and I think that worked well. But, every few years, you have a shakeup now with announcers. People jump to other networks. Of course, part of it's been, when Fox started up, then they pulled people and whatever there. Of course, NBC, they've kind of got, the guy coming in for Al Michaels pretty well set, and they're going to be like Tirico. They're going to do real well. Him and Collingsworth together. So I do think, especially ESPN is has not been as competitive with their announcing teams as other networks have been. So they want to do something. I don't know if Aikman's totally the answer, but it'll definitely give them a big name.
ESPN did a thing this year with the Manning cast for a number of their games. And I saw different people say, they would go back and forth between the game and the Manning cast. And then other people who absolutely loved the Manning cast, people who didn't like the Manning cast. I personally was a huge fan of the Manning cast. Thought it was a great way to watch football. If you bring in Troy Aikman, isn't part of the deal is we're not going to take away viewership? Like, we're not doing the Manning cast because we've got Troy Aikman? Or do you think they still try to do something like the Manning cast or do it with somebody else or whatever it may be, plus still doing the regular game with Troy Aikman?
I think they'd still do the regular game with Troy Aikman. I think there's people, again, I think the Mannings added a lot to it. But again, if you're really trying to follow the football game, you wanted to watch the other announcers. And I think there was such a disparity there. I wondered if the Manning thing was a little bit of an experiment that they might just change to that altogether, have them, do Monday Night Football, but do it more like they were doing it. They would have to do a little bit more with the game, no doubt about that. But I just kind of wondered. I'm sure it was some kind of experiment. I'm not sure exactly, behind it. And I've not heard a whole lot. I assume they'll continue the thing with the Mannings. Of course, they weren't every game this year, and they brought on a lot of interesting people with them. So, but no, I don't think that would necessarily mean they wouldn't, because I'm sure ESPN didn't hurt by having them both on there. Probably was better on ESPN2 than what they would have had, what was going on opposite the game anyhow.
The thing that hurt was the guys they hired to do Monday Night Football, because all of a sudden they're competing with themselves. They're competing against somebody else in their company. And Manning, he had total control over that broadcast. And was able, that was the deal. I can do what I want, how I want. They let him do it wisely. Let him do it, by the way, I think. But it really hurt the other guys. And I think it just kind of, I think ESPN knew that they didn't have a team calling Monday Night Football that was going to demand people to watch. Hence, the Manning cast was good for ESPN as well. But Troy Aikman coming over, you got to put somebody with him. If Joe Buck doesn't come too, you got to find someone that makes sense over there. And they've had, guys that could do that job and sit back and let Aikman do his thing. But I don't know how much Aikman wants to change, how much he's going to be willing to put up with somebody he's not worked with before. And that could be an interesting transition to see. The other thing I've heard, Dad, is that the replacement for Aikman could be Sean Payton, former New Orleans Saints head coach. Do you see that as being possibly a good fit, or do you think they just bring up somebody? Greg Olson had called games last year, the former tight end. I thought he was really good, but I'm not sure if he's a guy that brings in people either. So I don't know. Your thoughts on Sean Payton possibly going to that role, or somebody else?
Well, I think you're right. Olson did do really well, no doubt about it. But yeah, Sean Payton would be a guy to at least try there and see if he can develop into it. Of course, in all honesty, Aikman developed into it. I don't think he was really good at all when he started out, but that developed. And so, I think Sean Payton could. Another variable in this you keep hearing about is Al Michaels. Is Al Michaels, what's he going to want to do? Is he going to want to do Thursday nights? Is he going to want to work much at all? I've heard ESPN's tried to get him some too. And of course, anybody you pair him with, when you have him on, not only are you going to draw, but you're going to draw because he does an excellent job. I just don't think he wants to probably be on every week, announcer now like he was, but that one will be interesting to see where that shakes up. But yeah, I did hear about Sean Payton, and I think he'd be a good one to try. Exactly where would it work, and I think he could do real well.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get Al Michaels and Troy Aikman, that's going to be a draw for sure. But I would think that if Al Michaels still wanted to call every week, I think he'd still be at NBC. I don't think they would have let him walk away. I like Tirico. I think he'll do great on NBC. He does great on NBC. But I'm okay with Collinsworth. I was okay with Buck and Aikman as well. I'm okay with the top guys, Nance and Romo on CBS. I don't have any issues with those guys. I think they all do a really good job at what they do. And I think people who get mad about Troy Aikman just didn't like Troy Aikman. I don't think it was an issue of actually what he was calling. Same thing with Chris Collinsworth. I think people mock Chris Collinsworth. I think Chris Collinsworth does a pretty good job on NBC, and don't mind listening to any of those guys. Be interested to see how those pairings shake out when it's all said and done.
An interesting thing too. I don't know, if NBC's got a hold on him, but young guy I think has done well is Collinsworth's son.
Yeah,
I think he's come along real well, and I think he's definitely going to move up into business somewhere down the line, and he might be a guy someone would look at again. I don't know. I assume he could go to any network from there, but I think he's done real well.
I would be shocked if NBC doesn't have some kind of hold on him, and I think that him and his dad working together at the same spot's a pretty cool deal, and maybe even they're trying to work it out where eventually he's doing what Tirico's doing and Collinsworth is there as play-by-play. I don't know. Or not play-by-play, as color. Him doing play-by-play. I'm not sure if that's what he wants to do or anything like that, but I think his future's probably in the hands of NBC at the moment, at the very least. But you're right. He's done a good job. He's done a good job for sure. Let's transition over to college basketball, Dad. We've got the top 6 teams in the nation all go down on the exact same day. That's unheard of, never happened before. Going to be a while probably before it happens again. We talked about the conspiracies behind Duke getting good seedings in the NCAA tournament. Well, now the door's wide open for Duke for sure, especially if they end up winning the ACC. Gonzaga, Arizona, Auburn, Purdue, Kansas, and Kentucky all go down on Saturday. Have you seen anything like that before?
No, that was amazing that they all went down at the same time. But like I said, we've talked here on the podcast that it's really wide open this year. There's a lot of people. It's going to be a great, exciting tournament. I think the conference tournaments will be more interesting because of that. Usually, I didn't get as excited about them because the number 1 seed, whether they won or didn't win the conference tournament, that wasn't gonna change a whole lot with their rankings this year. That could be very interesting. Somebody going down early could drop them, not out of the tournament, but definitely could drop them down in the seeding, and the seeding is going to be super interesting. There's always a lot of controversy over that anyhow, and I think the committee is going to have an interesting time with how they set the brackets up. But yeah, and it'd be interesting to see, we got 1 week left here, how the rankings change this week. Obviously, Duke's going to move up, Baylor will move up, Arkansas will move up. But how far the teams that lost, how much are they going to drop? A couple teams lost to unranked teams or teams that weren't ranked very high. Some that wasn't the case. And you even had Texas Tech lost. I mean, there were several. Duke was about the one team that survived in the top 10 there. So to me, it'll be interesting to see where the rankings are this week. And of course, these last 2 games before the regular season, probably pretty big for all of them. I mean, it's a very good year in college basketball, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. And it'll just be interesting as it winds down. Again, you got a few teams, even some of the ones of St. Mary's that are ranked low that won. You got Murray that's not ranked real high, but again, they continue to win. So the rankings will be good this week, I think. All right. Looks like Vince having a little bit of technical issue there. So we'll just kind of continue along. Again, it's easy for me to talk college basketball because March Madness is one of my favorite times of the year. I enjoy a lot about NFL and NFL draft and things like that. But March Madness, I remember before, the days with computers and brackets every year, getting out the old paper and writing up the brackets and writing them down as fast as I could as they announced them on Sunday afternoon, and that was always exciting. But of course, now the brackets, it's been great because you have people that aren't even in that much into sports or even into college basketball. They do a bracket or do several of them. Excuse me, and it makes it just very interesting. More people watching it, more people paying attention. There, of course, I'm up here in Southwest Ohio right now, and they're starting to have a lot of excitement here because Dayton always hosts the first four, and it's something they have really, done a great job with. And I know they're looking forward to seeing who they're getting in to that tournament also. All right, you back with us there, Vince?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're fine.
All right, good. My internet has gone wacky on me, so hopefully we're good to go. But yeah, a lot of fun, craziness going on, and of course the tournament coming up really soon as well, so it's exciting to see all that come together. Want to hit some quick NASCAR stuff, Dad. We're gonna have to get on our we got a segment we want to share with people on fantasy baseball, but NASCAR, an interesting route for them today. It was sorry, now I'm all shaken from my internet issues. But Brett Keselowski, he wrecked two people last week, and wonderfully he was wrecked this week. Thought that was a fun thing that happened there for sure. Exciting to see as well. Then I was looking at, sorry, I'm trying to find thanks for carrying that for me, though. I do appreciate that. Then Chase Elliott, he's racing hard today, and his own teammate comes up and runs him into the wall, and Kyle Larson, who ends up winning the race, and Elliott was not happy about it. And actually, there was a point in the race where Elliott, it looks like he, first of all, when Larson was coming up behind him, he didn't get out of his way. And then he caused a caution. He spun out, and it kind of sounded like he was spinning out on purpose because he asked right before he spun out, he said, I want to make sure I saw that correctly. Did he do what I think he did? And they said, that's all that we could see. And then next thing you know, he goes spinning, nobody around him, which caused the caution and then caused everybody to catch up to Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson still ends up winning over Austin Dillon. Eric Jones was third. Suarez ran well, was fourth. Joey Logano fifth. A fun race. This is, again, 2 weeks in a row now that I've been watching NASCAR again. It's been a few years before I got into it. I'm back, all the way back. Really enjoyed the race. Actually, one of my kids watched most of it with me today as well. He was cheering on a couple guys. Of course, once the guys he was cheering wrecked out, he immediately started cheering for the winner. Oh, yeah, I want him to win. Yeah, I know I've been a fan of his for a long time. So, nonetheless, that happened. But, Dad, I know you weren't able to see the whole race this time, but it seemed like pretty exciting so far this season. A good start to the NASCAR season.
Oh, I think it's been an excellent start to the NASCAR season. I think, with having it being a little more wide open and with the new cars, and, we'll see a little more as it goes. But, yeah, it seems like it's regained a lot of its excitement that it had maybe a few years ago. And I know that its hope is still very popular. And, I think you're right. I think it's off to a good start. They do a good job. I remember when they used to jump all over the place geographically. And now, as far as travel and stuff, they do better. We got the races out west here for the next, this week and in the next 2 weeks there. And that makes a lot of sense, too. So.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. We talked a lot about baseball on the fantasy baseball show, so I'll tell people go take a listen to that. Belly Up Fantasy Baseball. You can hear some thoughts on those things. Dad, we're going to break away real quick for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to bring you the about fantasy baseball ranking first and third baseman. We'll be right back after this word about the Sports Podcast Awards.
What's going on, Belly Up sports fans? Thanks for tuning in to the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. We have some really exciting news for several Belly Up Podcast Network shows. The Sports Stove Podcast, the Rough Cut Sportscast, and Here in Puckburg have all been nominated for a Sports Podcast Award. So, head on over to sportspodcastawards.com and make sure to vote for the Sports Stove Podcast for Best College Sports Podcast and Best News and Current Affairs Podcast. Vote for the Rough Cut Sportscast for Best American Football Podcast and vote for Here in Puckburg for Best Winter Sports Podcast. Again, that website is sportspodcastawards.com. Thanks for being the best part of Belly Up Sports. We are what they are.
And we're going to start off with first base. And we're going to rank our top 10 first basemen. We're going to see what similarities we have, what some kind of differences. I'm sure there are quite a few, maybe. We're going to take a look at this. And we're going to start off, I guess we'll start off with my list. How about that, guys? And
There we go.
If you are ranking first baseman and don't have Vladimir Guerrero at the top of your list, you need to stop right now and go back and re-educate yourself, because obviously you don't know how to play fantasy baseball. All right. So especially if you're in some kind of a dynasty league or something. I'm sorry. Maybe you guys will come and prove me wrong in a little while, but I don't see it happening. We're talking about a guy who's just 22 years old. Okay. And let's take a look at this. He was 5th in baseball in batting. He was tied for 1st in home runs and second in RBIs. He was 3rd in hits. He was 8th in walks. This guy filled up every stat except for one, and that is that he struck out 110 times. That was 107th in Major League Baseball. We just talked about Joey Gallo just a minute ago. You know how many strikeouts he had? He had over 100 more strikeouts than 498 at bats. Guerrero had 604. So this guy does it all. Only thing he doesn't do is steal bases, but you can get that from other positions. So I got him as my solid number 1. I got Freddy Freeman at number 2. He's not signed right now, but it doesn't really matter who he winds up signing with, because he's got 3 seasons where he's played 158 more games in a full season. He's got it. He keeps the strikeouts to a minimum. His on-base percentage was .393. So almost 4 times out of 10 he got on base. So, and then I got Matt Olson at number 3. This is a guy who in his last 3 full seasons has hit 29, 36, and 39 home runs. So he'll give you the power. And then his RBIs have gone up 3 full seasons in a row. And he struck out 113 times. So these guys, they buck the trend of all these other major leaguers. They're not striking out 190 times. They're putting the ball in play. Number 4, I got Go Smit. The guy, he's been around forever. He's 34, but he hit he hit 295 with 31 homers and 100 RBIs. What more could you ask out of a first baseman? He does it all. Then I've got Pete Alonso of the New York Mets at number 5. His Ks actually went from 183 to 127. So he's learning how the strike zone works. I got Jose Abreu at number 6. He's played 150 or more games in 5 or 6 full seasons, so you can just put him in your lineup. He's there every day. Then I've got Jared Walsh of the Angels. Now that Pujols has moved on, you could stick him at first. He'll be there. And he hit 28 home runs. He also qualifies as in the outfield, so that's a nice plus. And then I noticed that these rankings really go off the rails a little bit. I got number 8. I got Ryan Mountcastle. I didn't realize that this guy hit 33 home runs a year ago. And so the Orioles can't possibly be as terrible as they were last year. So you got to figure that he'll get some more guys on base ahead of him. And then I got C.J. Cron from Colorado. He plays for Colorado. So, you figure that his stats will be overblown just a little bit because he plays in Colorado. But he hit 281, 28 homers, 92 RBIs a year ago. And then my number 10 guy, this is all dependent upon him being healthy. Talking about Rhys Hoskins, you talk about a guy that's got power potential. He's got as much as anybody in the game. He just has to be healthy. And so he does know how to walk, too. He had 116 walks in 2019. He has a 360 career on-base percentage, so he can put the ball in play once he actually swings the bat. So that's my top 10. So Vince, take it away.
Boy, yeah, when I saw your list and saw Ryan Mountcastle and C.J. Cron, I thought, oh, man, first baseman. It's a rough list. It's interesting. I'm a firm believer. If you don't get one of the top first basemen, hold out, get 2 or 3 guys. You can go through guys left. I mean, all the time you can find first basemen throughout the season that are hitting home runs, that are giving you some sort of help in certain areas. I feel like there's a lot of value late with first rounders, as far as not great value but if you got a guy that's injured, whatever, you can find a first baseman pretty easily throughout the season. And I've got 7 of the same guys that you have on my list. But I am surprised you left out somebody, Kevin, and we'll talk about it because they're on mine and Dan's list. So we'll get to that in a second. But overall, I think the list is fine. You're allowed to be wrong a couple of times. So
okay. All right. All right. So Dan, what do you think?
Well, I think the top 6 are pretty self-explanatory for this year's first base class. They're unequivocally the best hitting first baseman in the league. And then Ryan Mountcastle's a guy I thought about because you're right. You look at the stats, you're like, there's no way that guy hit 33 home runs and I didn't hear about it. But then you remember that no one talks about the Baltimore Orioles, and that's why you didn't hear about it, because they're busy losing 110 games a season.
127 or whatever it is they are.
Yeah, and C.J. Cron is a guy that had a really good season, obviously benefited from playing in Coors Field, and it'll be very interesting to see if he can keep the high batting average. His 281 batting average was well over his career batting average, and I believe set a new career high. So he's a guy that could provide some value there at the number 9 spot.
All right, man. So who do you have on your list, man?
All
we
right.
can talk about what you have wrong.
All right. Mine's right, for the record.
Okay.
But be good for you. The guy that you left out was Max Muncy, your Dodgers boy. I'd like to get
with Vince, the only reason why I didn't put him on that list because he's currently, we don't know if he's healthy or not. So that's why I did not do that.
Okay. Well, I agree with you on your top 2, Vlad and Freddie Freeman as the top 2 guys. I'm really weirdly high on the Mets this year. Last year they were so horrible, and there wasn't a lot of good excuse for it. And Pete Alonso's a guy who's got the ability, and it's got to click eventually. So I'm kind of going high on the Mets this year. So Pete Alonso, I've got him at 3, Muncy at 4, Jared Walsh at 5, and this is another guy that I might be too high on, but I like Jared Walsh a lot. And again, I think the Angels are going to have some improvement this year. The hitting around him is improving, which should help him out as well. And so I like him there. Olson at 6, he's burned me before. He's been fine. When I think of Matt Olson, I don't think of top tier. And even though his stats have been there at times, Matt Olson scares me. I think he's due for a drop at some point here soon. Jose Abreu, right there at 7. I think you had him at 6. Goldschmidt, another guy that I just think is going to have a down year. St. Louis, they weren't great last year. They ended up making a run there at the end, but he was great for a time in Arizona. Smart move by St. Louis to get him, but I think Goldschmidt's going to start going the other direction. Then my last 2 is Cronenworth In San Diego, he has multiple position eligibility, which I think boosts his value at all positions, but I understand those who don't have him up there. And Chris Bryant, where he's eligible still in most leagues, most places as a first baseman. I'm a big Chris Bryant fan. As much as I hate the Cubs, I know he's not there anymore. Huge Chris Bryant fan of what he was able to do last year. I just assume he's going to be able to find a good landing spot this year. Teams are going to want him. He should be able to put himself in a good situation once free agency opens again and get in a good spot. And I think be a really productive player. We'll talk about him again at the third base rankings as well.
Well, I don't have him at first base because when I was looking at position eligibility, I saw that he was third base and outfield.
Okay.
From what I saw. So
Yeah.
you might have seen something different. I didn't see him qualified at first, so I didn't consider him as a first baseman. And a lot of that has to do with where he winds up to me.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but Vince, I think you're way off on Matt Olson because I had him last year, and and he was a guy. He won't be able to do it this year, but he was a guy I could take a little later in the draft, and he gave huge value to me. So I'm really